About 4 months ago, in December of last year, there was a big hack, referred to actually as a ransomware hack, on Insomniac Games. Insomniac Games is owned by PlayStation, and the reason it was called a ransomware attack is because they were hacked by this group for the sole purpose of obtaining money. So the hacking group Riceta hacked them, stole a whole bunch of data, over 1.6 terabytes of data to be exact, and they threatened that they would basically leak all of this info if Insomniac did not forward them $2 million worth of Bitcoin. Well, Insomniac had the same attitude that America has with dealing with terrorism. You know, we don't negotiate with terrorists. So Insomniac said, nope, we're not paying the $2 million. And so as a result, Riceta did leak the info. It was a whole slew of different information. There was info on like salary for all of their employees. There was, of course, info on future developments, future games that they were planning that were just in the drawing board at that point. Future games that were planned all the way out to the year 2032. This included a Venom game and X-Men game. I believe the main thing was like an upcoming Wolverine game. They even released it, I think, like the alpha version or like the pre-alpha version in this leak, and Insomniac basically came out and said, yeah, that is the version, but that's, you know, a super early version, so don't go just off of that. But something else that was released in this whole dump of information was data, specifically sales data, revenue data, download data on games that already exist, not just for Insomniac Games, but for PlayStation as a whole. So Insomniac is owned by PlayStation, but they are just a small part of PlayStation. But yeah, somehow Insomniac, even though they're just a little part of PlayStation, they had a whole bunch of info, a whole bunch of stats on pretty much every PlayStation first-party game. Well, today it has just came out that somebody has basically compiled this information and actually went through all of this data to kind of make it more digestible. I would assume that this is the same data that we got back in December, and people are just kind of making it into this version that's like actually an easy-to-read chart now. I don't think this new info that just came out today is a result of a new leak. I can't actually confirm that. I don't actually know. But regardless, this is pretty cool. This actually gives a lot of insight on how things were in June of last year. So this data gives an exact snapshot of June 2023, how well every single game was doing on the PlayStation Network in terms of their downloads and their revenue. This is stuff that we do not get from console games at all. PC games, especially Steam, are a lot better with stuff like this. I mean, they don't release all data, but like concurrent player count, for example, that is something that you can view at any time or place on the Steam network. Sales numbers, I think, is something you can also view on Steam. But for console games, PlayStation, Xbox, you just don't get really any of that kind of data. For whatever reason, Microsoft and Sony are both very protective of that kind of data. So this bit of information here that was just compiled kind of gives some insight on how these sales have been for PlayStation. Now, this was posted on the Reset Era forum by a user called Redkong, and there were other tables that were posted by this Twitter user RealRadic, R-A-D-E-C. So shout out to them. I think it's pretty cool that they went through and kind of broke down all of this info. Check out both of their posts if you are curious on looking up these entire charts, because I'm serious, it's like over 500 games that are on the PlayStation Network that they go through. I mean, it goes all the way down to games that have like 10 downloads total. Now, some of them, or actually a lot of them I should say, are kind of obvious. So like in first place is Spider-Man, the one released in 2018, and then the other one that was released in 2020, the Miles Morales version, that is number 4. A couple God of War games are up there, a couple Last of Us games are up there, a couple Horizon games are up there. This is all just the top 10. You definitely see a lot of Uncharted games up there. But what is kind of interesting is how some of these older games have still survived and maintained a long-standing rank of, you know, highest downloads, or, you know, in the top 10 or top 20 or top 30 list. That is what Real Radic's table is that they posted on Twitter. So like one of them that they posted is the top 30 most successful first-party PlayStation 3 games. And again, this is as of June of last year. This isn't as of like 2014 or 2015. So it's interesting to see what is still up there, what is still making big bucks. For that, The Last of Us beats it by a mile. Like second place doesn't even come close. I've heard The Last of Us was a good game, but man, they are still making a ton of money for PlayStation in 2024. This is a PS3 game. And there's other ones as well, but none of them come close to The Last of Us. Number 2 is Gran Turismo 6. If I'm not mistaken, I think Gran Turismo is like the Forza games, only for PlayStation. And then I'll just say 3 more. So number 3 is Journey, number 4 is Warhawk, number 5 is Wipeout HD. I have not heard of any of those, but apparently they are still extremely relevant. And there's also breakdowns of like most successful classic PS1 games. The number 1 for that is The Legend of Dragoon. That's another one where number 2 doesn't even come close to number 1. I haven't really heard of that game much, but apparently it's very good. There's also PS Vita games that are ranked. Top 1 for that is Kill Killzone Mercenary. Also haven't heard of that. You know, I'm realizing, by the way, I think I'm very out of the loop when it comes to PlayStation games. It's obvious they've got a lot of first-party titles that seem to be doing very well that I've just never heard of. Yeah, I'm a PlayStation 2 gamer at heart, so if it's anything after that, I guess I just don't really know much of it. I figured I would see like a bunch of Uncharted, and then like, I don't know, Spyro, Sly Cooper, Little Big Planet. But no, there's some titles here, some classic titles, that are still doing good today that I have never heard of, and obviously, people are still buying these games. That's what's cool. So like, again, all of this data just comes from the PlayStation Network, so none of this data comes from physical disc collections. I think that when you definitely factor in the convenience of digital sales, it makes it easier to distribute and therefore sell a lot of these classic games. Overall, kind of a cool leak. While I do think it's definitely trashy that, you know, this group hacked in to Insomniac Games and tried to extract money from them for that data, I do think that making this data public not only is kind of cool, but really should just be something that is public knowledge. I don't see why not. Like I said, PC has usually been a lot more open doors when it comes to stuff like this, but consoles not so much. So yeah, let's just be thankful with the information that we got, because it probably won't be until a long time from now, if at all, that we will ever get information like this for a console ever again.